I'd like to bring the meeting to order. I'd like to do a self-introductions. And also, if you check on your nameplate, you've got a dot, like that dot, turn it this way, means you're a voting member of the committee. Of course, we want to hear from everybody on the group here. Well, I'm Pat Walsh. I'm with Fox Public Relations.
Stephen L. I'm the Human Services Manager for Lane County.
Christina Payne, Executive Director, Lane Workforce Partnership.
Larry Patrick, and Sheriff House.
John Wright, Coordinating Department of Human Services.
Mary Wilson, Catholic Representative Oil.
Jim Massengill, former homeless person.
Excuse me, Jacob Fox from AXA.
Pat Barr, Board of County Commissioners. Always happy to see I'm a voting member of something. Involved most committees on that.
Neil O'Bringer, City of Springfield staff.
Sean Murphy, Local Center. Stephanie Henning, City of Eugene Center.
Raj Schneider, City of Eugene staff.
And Louise, City of Provo, King County. Robin Scott.
Dan Bryant, First Christian Church.
Great, well, thanks. Welcome, everyone. We've got public comment, got a list of anybody that wants to speak. This is the time in our meeting where we have people in the audience take 3 minutes to speak. So we don't have anyone on the list. All right. Who's right? Who's that? Earl, you've got something you wanted to make on our agenda.
Okay, I just wanted to take a moment and remember Major Thomas Egan, who died 5 years ago, 2008. Longer than that, 6 years ago, in the snow in the Whitaker area at the end of Blair. And this morning, people gathered to remember him as they do every year. I just wanted to take a minute and acknowledge that and appreciate that we had a number of people around the table who attended and spoke. And Mayor Piercy was there, Commissioner Farr was there, Todd was there. Who else was there? Dan was actually honored there and joined the group, and it was, I'm not going to forget anyone, but it was a very connecting event. A lot of people were acknowledged for the work they do in the Homelessness Center, and stories we were told about Major Egan. And I think the sort of the connecting part of it, I think, for everyone is that there were so many people like around this table and in the community that either helped start it or volunteer for it or add something to it or support it financially, and it was really a beautiful ceremony today. And I wanted to let you know, because of Lisa's incredible data collection system, that we know that last year 1,124 people, duplicated people. So maybe using it multiple nights, but over 1,000 people used Egan Warming Center last season, and that was for 19 nights. So that's a pretty amazing number of people who were able to come in from the cold. And this actually is the 5th season. It's run like 08, 09. So this is the 5th season that the Egan Warming Center has been going on. So. Since Poverty and Homelessness Board, there's a whole lot being done in this area to save people's lives on those homeless. So I want to remember that. And then in connection to that, you'll see in your packets, and for those of us who are the folks in the audience who've come to watch the meeting or see what we're doing over here, you'll see when you came in the door in your packets, there's a flyer that describes the fact that CALC, Community Alliance of Lane County, is handling the street and remote area part of the, we call it now the point in time count for 2015, and we had our first organizing meeting was on December 16th of this week, and we had a big group of people there, and we have more areas that we're going to be covering this round. We're getting great participation in the veterans area, the youth area, and just all over. And I want to take a moment and thank the city of Eugene and Springfield and Lane County. We were able to collect site information because of Byron over for Lane County on some camps that we can visit that we normally wouldn't have. And that's also true for the city of Springfield. Sean's doing it in a little while. So Neil, thank you for getting us that information. And then Todd's been working with Pete Kearns to get us all Lake Camp information that they have. So we're going to reach areas that some we may have hit in 2013, but new ones that we have not reached out to before. So we're very, very excited about it. Again, Calc is our volunteer coordinator, and the county will be working with Calc on the 22nd to do a training with volunteers who are signing up over there. There you go. Thank you.
I always forget, we're taping this because some people want to watch and not hear. So,
Thanks. Minutes from our last meeting, has anyone had a chance to take a look at them? Are there any changes or corrections?
It's not the minute. Could you load the PDF from Dropbox? I don't have Word. Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, open it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
They're also online.
Oh, okay. As soon as they're free.
Let's move to accept the minutes. All in favor? Opposed?
I'm sorry, who was the, who seconded?
Byron. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Committee reports. The steering committee met. We looked at 3 issues from our last meeting. First one was e-meetings, the second was email voting, and the third was adding committee members to the standing committees. We got a recommendation from the legal counsel regarding e-meetings, and that was to not use e-meetings by phone or video for our board meetings here. The reason is that the public needs to have a way to listen live to the communications. We think that this sort of meetings would impede that. It would also be cumbersome to process and arrange in a timely manner. So we're not going to have e-meetings for this group. That was decided. The second item is email voting. Again, we confirmed with legal counsel about the deadline would suffice for a public meeting to get to be here to vote. So we won't be using email in lieu of attending the meeting. And again, we checked all of this with legal counsel. This was their best recommendation. Also, there wouldn't be an amendment needed added to the governance regarding that issue. In terms of adding community members to the standing committees, we're reviewing that process right now. We're working on an application to be developed so we can bring in more voices, more expertise as needed, and we'll bring that to you to the meeting next month. For more discussion. So that's where we stand on those 3 issues that we've kicked to the steering committee for our meeting in November. So if there's any questions or anything? Okay. Well, good enough. Well, let's move on to our other committee reports. Winter Strategies Committee, Dan.
So our Winter Strategies group is an ad hoc group, so it's not a standing committee. It's kind of an informal group, but we met twice. Second meeting was a few weeks ago, November something. And it's been working on a couple of things, and I have one action item for us. Supporting a lot of the, other things going on, the point-in-time count, different programs. One of the encouraging the county in particular, since we are a county agency, to step up with a couple of concrete actions. I really appreciate Commissioner Farr and what he's done coming out of that meeting to get the rest stop approved by the county commissioners. Down the street here, that is in progress. I think they're hoping to have a soft launch of that rest stop here before the end of the year. Probably that's going to be formal happening later. That rest stop. The other thing that Commissioner Farr requested was approval of the 2 county facilities, the pavilion and the one pod at Serbu. We got that. The third concept we're working on, but not ready to proceed yet, is getting approval to use county parks during the winter when they're being underused anyway as a camping site. We still got some more work to do on that before we can formalize it. I had a nice conversation with Commissioner Bozovich just an hour ago at the League Memorial about it, and he seemed very open to it. If we can get the county staff on board with that, I think we have possibilities probably for next year.
I think more likely, but a couple of small community activities, I think it's going to happen public.
Yeah. So that's just good. And one of the other big ideas that we've been working on is an expansion park in general. Fortunately, the city just recently restored some funding to St. Vincent de Paul so that they will be able to expand the services they provide for the park member, and they are proceeding with that. And I asked Terry McDonald what it would take to get businesses to sponsor sites, and we gave you a dollar figure today, $90 a site. So one of our ideas is to go out there and to ask businesses to sponsor a site. And for $90 a month, St. Vinny's can add another site to their list. And so we're going to work on that. And then we're putting together this car camping kit for those who are willing to host a site. Nonprofits, churches, and could be businesses as well. And just trying to educate people on how it works and what you need to do and so forth. And so hopefully that is something that we'll be able to launch after the first and have an event where we encourage folks that might be thinking about it to come to a one-shot thing to present the concept. And we would like that event to be endorsed by this body, not sponsored. And we'll get some other endorsers, probably at St. Vinny's official sponsorship. There are a number of other things we've been talking about, but those I think were the specific actions that were. We also identified, so you know that there are now 3 rest stops being run by community-supported shelters. The Safe Spot on Roosevelt, and then the vet camp that has 2 spots on the other side of the tracks there at Chambers and Northwest Expressway. The Eugene Mission has agreed to host a 4th site. Community-supported shelters has agreed to sponsor. So that probably won't launch until late January, maybe February. They've got to get their other site up and running before they're ready to take on another. But that seems to be in the works. So we're going to that. And the next deal, once that gets up, that will give us 30, 60, right? And we expanded the rest stops to 20 each. I mean, we'll have over 100 people officially, legally camping in the rest stops when we get involved.
I was going to add that Pat and I have made an appointment to speak to the Chamber of Commerce in early January about all the things that we're doing here, and hopefully get them to get interested and engaged in the sponsorship of park camping issues. That's the
So we'll have one more meeting probably after the first of the year, when we'll finalize all these things, and that'll do it for the winter strategy. So right now, on behalf of the committee, I would just present that motion to endorse the car camping, what do we call it, car camping kit event.
Second? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you.
I should have said, I meant to start by saying this wasn't part of our strategies, but I'll just take a moment. Pass out the new brochure for the next project of Opportunity Union Village called Emerald Village. I'm not sure that I've brought enough for everyone, so I might share it.
Susan, thank you, Dan.
So as long as you're doing that,
Yeah, I mean, danger president.
Yeah.
On the part of Commissioner Farr and I will invite you all to contribute to the Home for the Holiday for Homeless Vets that we're doing with St. Benny's as the recipient of those funds. We set ourselves a rather high bar of trying to raise $60,000 by the new year. So anything that any of you can do to contribute to that would be greatly appreciated.
You know, Pat, you asked me how to contribute after the last meeting,
Yeah.
and go to St. Benny's website and just say donate now, and there'll be that place down below, and it says Mayor Kitty Pearson on there currently, and it's for Home for the Holidays, and specifically says Home for the Holidays. And you can donate 500, 1,000, 5,000, 10 or less.
But those are okay.
Yes.
They can take those two. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Moving on, our next committee is
Yes, legislative committee. Commissioner Farr, Mayor Percy, and I had a great meeting with Representative Val Floyle and went over our Housing First legislative agenda with her. And out of that came a suggestion that perhaps what we look at is going forward with perhaps one or two other communities in Oregon and requesting funds for a pilot project as a part of the capital budget. And so we took her support, and she also suggested that we schedule a meeting with Representative Nathanson, who is the co-chair for the Human Services Ways and Means Committee, that some of our interest in some of the DHS budget items and getting the Oregon Health Authority to do certain things to help along the way would be served by meeting with her. So that's in the works to get a meeting scheduled with Representative Nathanson.
I had an occasion to meet with Representative Nathanson earlier this week. One of the things she's concerned about for Oregon in general is that we're leaving a lot of $400 million on the table from federal dollars that for veteran services, for veterans homelessness. And so we have the opportunity to speak with her. I know that's something, it wasn't the purpose of our meeting, but that's something that she shared with you.
You'll take it, right?
What she wants us to do is really figure out this the collaborative spirit. How do we all align so that we can bring those dollars to Oregon?
So we probably need the time.
Right.
And that's as much as I know about that issue, but I thought that we'd share it with you.
Good. So I feel like we're making excellent progress. The other thing I wanted to report on, and there's a copy in your packet today, is Governor Kitsaber's budget, and Kitsaber's budget did request $100 million in bonds for providing and increasing housing opportunities for primarily homeless families. And the way all of this will work is that all of the bonding requests will go to the Capital Facilities Committee, and then ultimately that gets resolved towards the end of the legislature. So both our request for pilot funding and this request is what he's budgeting is $85 million of geo-bonding, which is state-backed bonds. So the revenue for the bonding comes from the state, so there's no need to have financing to pay back those bonds. The general fund will pay back those bonds. And then $15 million in state lottery funding. And we've also had opportunity to connect, and through an association I belong to run, we're members of the Oregon Housing Alliance. And so when we talk next, we'll talk about the alignment of what we're requesting with those statewide groups and the governor's budget. And I'm meeting with Stephanie earlier this week or last week, and then I've also talked with Jacob Fox. So I think part of the deal around some of this is going to be in two different regards. One is to align our work with the Housing Policy Board around this, and then the second piece is there's an opportunity with consolidated plan that Stephanie's office is working on to align some of our goals so that we're all moving in the same direction. I'll talk a little bit about that more when we get into the focus topic later on in the agenda.
Steve, is there much information that you can provide to us about legislation so that I can share that with our intergovernmental relations manager and our city lobbyists, because, and I know probably the same for Springfield, just to make sure that we're all on the same page and we're talking to our legislators about if that really is the way that we're going to get the most effective action.
We'll get you in the loop. We had your lobbyist at the meeting.
Okay,
and then we also have
okay, good, great.
We've also been handed off to the person who's on contract for the city of Eugene as well to work and schedule in the native meeting. So we'll make sure we get you in the loop, and I'll work and get a meal in the loop.
And we are having some pretty significant monthly discussions at the Housing Policy Board about the legislative agenda. John Van Landingham, who really plays a pretty strong leadership role in emergency advocacy. So that's usually what he is giving his update on what's happening with the housing legislature. So anybody who wants to receive HPD packets who isn't currently, please let me know.
One more thing that I remember is that the governor's budget also sets aside tax credit financing for projects that serve folks who are homeless, mentally ill, in the corrections system, who are using a lot of health resources through the area health plan. So really, that really fits nicely with the chronic homeless project that we're talking about as well.
Thanks, Steve. Stephanie, anything else? All right, we'll move on to our next topic, which is poverty and self-sufficiency. Steve and John Ranch and Christina Payne. So, there's Steve.
All right. I was going to do a PowerPoint, but we have a tight agenda, so I decided to do handouts instead. And also, while the material is being handed out, I want to mention to you that that in the packet for the meeting, there is this, it's called the CAPO, the Community Action Partnership of Oregon Indicators Project. And so there was material that came out in the packet as well. Let me give you some background. As Lane County's Community Action Agency, we belong to a network of 18 community action agencies across the state. And the community action agencies have been working with Oregon State University Rural Studies Program to really continue to do some best practice research on poverty in the state of Oregon, and then also to look at what we can do to better measure our ability to make an impact on poverty in the state. And so out of that came this project, which is looking at a model called, it's a theory of change, And really, this will work well for when our strategic planning committee starts meeting after the beginning of the year, because the whole premise of the theory of change is that you need to ask the question about what is it that you're trying to change. And then part of the process is to come up with, well, what are the major outcomes you want to achieve, and then what are the assumptions that you have, and then to develop strategies that are going to get to those outcomes. And when I first got involved with this and we first started looking at this, it seemed pretty simple. Because if you look at this, the first thing that was developed was this individual and family success model that's on you have a diagram of. And the whole idea is, well, what do we want as an outcome for low-income Oregonians? We want Oregonians to be basic needs secure. So that's part of what we do is help Oregonians be basic needs secure. And then the other thing is, what are those things that we can do to equip people to exit poverty? And some of the key areas under that is what can it add to people's resiliency, because we know that there are job losses, there are medical challenges, there are things that come up in people's lives that can challenge them, and the more resilient people can be, the better they're going to be in life. The second piece is employability, and then the third piece is resource adequate. So then the way we get to that is if you flip the page, the way this works is there are two different pieces to this. There's the individual and family. What does the individual or family need? And then there's what does a community need to have in order to be successful with this? And I want to mention to you that this is a work in progress. So eventually the indicators that are the key indicators that align with other state, federal programs, and some of the indicators you'll see on these sheets are sort of placeholder indicators. So then you'll see the bubbles, and some of them are blue and some of them are green. And so the idea behind that is, and some of them are blue, sort of a blue-green, multicolored. And the idea around that is that there are certain things that as a community action agency, and as a community action agency here in Lane County, many of the services that we provide are provided by various nonprofit and public entities. And so this is done in partnership with a lot of community organizations as well as county staff. And so the things that are on the left side of the diagram are pretty pretty common sense, but the beauty of this is there's some beauty in simplicity. It's like having that elevator speech where you go to a party or something and somebody asks what you do, and they say, oh, you work for human services. Well, what does that do? And then they get down to, well, what difference does it make? Well, we're trying to stabilize people's basic needs, and we're trying to equip people to move out of poverty. So it's trying to get down to let's have a real clear purpose in mind of what we're trying to accomplish. And then the blue things are things that typically are provided through the community action agencies in Oregon, where they have some involvement in providing resources for
And then the ones that are blue-green are those where, in a lot of cases, if it's not provided by the agency, it's a referral to other organizations. On the right side are things that we think of, like skills and childcare supports so that parents can raise healthy children. Children have knowledge skills necessary to succeed. Oregonians are able to manage their finances. Oregonians have employment and life skills. Oregonians are part of a social network and access to legal resources. So, again, what we're trying to do is we're trying to come up with some way of constructing a model that is going to get us where we need to go. Where this fits with the strategic planning that we're going to be doing is that we're going to end up as part of our strategic plan, and we're going to have specific strategies or goals that people are interested in. We may say, out of the folks who need a certain type of service, we're going to try to serve this many people, or we're going to have the outcome of housing this many people, or whatever it is that we're going to achieve. And so what will be helpful is we'll be able to sort of map out how the things that we're doing in the community and the things that we're doing here as a poverty and homelessness board and through our partnerships are supporting this theory of change. So that's it in a nutshell, and I'll answer any questions that you have about this.
I'm just going to comment, there are a number of things that you just referred to that are also embedded in the Early Learning Alliance programs and in some of the financial stability work that I think we're doing.
Right.
So I think one of the things that would be really helpful is if we could make sure that we're linking and connecting all the dots. We talked about market. Really looking at how we magnify that impact by through the linkages.
Yeah. I think that's great, because when I looked again today at who signed up for the strategic planning committee, it includes people like Maureen from United Way, and John from DHS and Christina, and so we have and Stephanie and Pat. We have some key people who are linked in who are going to be important players in looking at the resources that go into this, and then the areas. Part of it will be look at the areas where this group can provide some added value. And then maybe where we have agenda items that we want to take to the Early Learning Council, or we want to take to the CCO, or we want to take to the Housing Policy Board, or the Human Services Commission, or the Workforce Board, or so on and so forth.
Just quickly, I was just going to mention that a lot of the items on here are also things that kind of is asking Eugene and Springfield to look at as part of the consolidated planning process. So really, we're really broad multiple efforts in the community. And I would just underscore what Maureen said, that the co-chair of the Financial Stability Partnership for United Way, and there are so many linkages between this frame and what we have been working on over the past 2 years.
So, just I guess a couple pieces of feedback, because I think that these kind of conversations are important.
Sure.
People to, long-term operation of the communities going on. One thing I would encourage, out of this is to, have hopefully those 1 or 2 or 3 things that we should be doing right now, come out, and be identified and come out of the bottom. Sometimes I think strategic, planning conversations are really, really important. But they kind of give you that long-term vision, right? And I really, as a policymaker,
and when, I love it when people come with that long-term vision on how to move the dial, but also those three things that, you know, are like, you should be doing right now. Help us do this.
Great.
Steve, just to kind of add a real life example. So Todd pulled together a meeting this week with the mission, and I know some folks are here from the mission, and HACSA and the VA, and Pearl was there as well, so the city, the county, HACSA, the Housing Authority, and the mission, to talk about how do we wrap supports around folks in the mission to help them get better as quickly as possible and move out. And out of that meeting came some very tangible next steps. Anna's there too, so all the right people were there. Some very tangible next steps to look at 24 people that are in the mission that are likely veterans or have had some connection to the military, to figure out how to help them get out of the mission as quickly as possible. And in that meeting, folks from the VA offered to come to a meeting 2 days later at night to meet individually with each one of these folks. So for me, this is a good plan, but we also have to figure out how to put these plans in action quickly, which is the point Sean made. And also, I know that this group really prioritized when we all started to form was we need to be action, we need to make things happen. So it was an exciting meeting with some very logical and tangible next steps.
Good.
So I think it was a good lead-in, you know, kind of what Stephanie and Maureen were saying about how all these things are starting to line up in alignment. And I know for DHS, I'm going to talk a little bit about what the news provider and then counties are that idea of probably some of the challenges of lining these things up and then deciding which groups are going to will be assisted. And I think, as we all know around this table, that community is a lot greater than we can ever do. So how do we strategically use certain groups to be successful while at the same time not trying to screw the other population out? So in DHS, besides wanting to integrate with what's going on here in the county, and we've been at it for many years, but also at the state level in the governor's recommended budget where DHS has been moving for the last decade or two, is really to make sure we integrate with the early learning goals and working with those young families and children, so those kids are ready to learn. Work with the workforce partners, and Christine will talk about the initiatives there. And also CCOs, so we certainly want to, we know that the health of families and kids, you know, the families will be better off if they're healthy, and able to do different things, and the kids aren't sick, and they're not sick. And they move forward and be more self-sufficient. So it all kind of goes together and it helps the CCO reach their goals. And then also education reform. And I think for years and years we've all known that if we wait until kindergarten or first grade, a lot of things are already established. It's kind of like the early learning, but education reform realized that we have to start really working with the learning council from birth forward so those kids are ready, and then the school education reform to be more successful. So all these things kind of integrate at a high level. So then in Lane County for DHS and our self-citizenship programs, just so you have an idea of the number of families we serve, we serve 2,700 temporary assistance in need family cases, and that grant is only 38% of federal poverty. They either get SNAP, so they get up to around 70%. So that's 2,700, mostly single head household. There's some two-parent households. And they're unemployed as well. Yeah, so that's 2,700. In DHS, we serve 35,000 households with SNAP. It's a food stamp program. That is 65,000 individuals. Close to 30,000 children between the ages of 0 and 18 on SNAP. And what that means is that to be over for SNAP, you have to be below 130% of federal poverty. So if you think about rent, utilities, have a child go to school, you have to pay for books, you have to pay for activities, you have to pay for school programs, you probably don't have. So that's a big issue there. We also provide assistance for about 900 COVID-related daycare families to enter employment. We provide child care subsidy for them so they can balance and pay their bills and not, if they're going to work, have to pay almost their entire check for child care. And we also, through some of the veterans program, we also, see people in the enrolled in the 50-50 program where we can get veterans who are on SNAP, 2% federal match, or a match from the two agencies to provide employment services. So that's something that we need to do for veterans who are on SNAP. So then the other, when I talk about poverty, and you guys all know this, is that there's a huge impact on those families. Being in poverty, sometimes there's substance abuse, sometimes there's domestic violence, there's some mental health issues. So really it has a great impact on the community on child welfare, which I also oversee. So we have 850 children in foster care on every month on average sometimes. We have another 200 families where we run wraparound services to keep the children in the home and provide services, but it's under court supervision. So it's part of our responsibility. So that's over 1,000 kids each month that are either in foster care or involved in child welfare. And that's a lot of kids in the So, in the child welfare system, because of the issues that come up, a lot of them are around neglect and poverty and substance abuse. We field 800 to 1,000 calls of abuse and neglect each month. We do one-on-one assessments, full assessments, 200 to 220 families each month. So, when it's found that we're really interested in child welfare DHS is really integrating services with these other entities and with our subsistence program to help people get out of poverty and move forward. So same thing with the goals that we have in this team. And I think the other part is that we really want to safely and equitably reduce the number of kids in foster care. And that's either by preventing kids from coming into the system or assisting kids to get out of the system soon, either reunification or adoption. And so I think all these strategies really work, and all of them are kind of help us with prevention. So that if families have services and have self-sufficiency plan and they're doing well, their kids are going to do well, they don't have to be involved. And so that's kind of where we see ourselves. And in the child welfare program, we have a differential response now that we instituted last in May, and it has some funding. And just to give you an idea of the funding, we spend $600,000 a year out of our, we call it SPURF money, but funding for housing is for case management and up to 6 months of subsidy. And that's, it's going to be more than 60 families, but if everybody was in the full 6 months, then full subsidy would be 60 families a year. That is not enough. We have families who can't have their then it's more interesting, Jacob knows that once we provide some housing help, we're going to make something, they drop off these other lists. So the other lists where they help them for many, many years, they fall off those lists. So the priorities are never interesting too. So, I think there's a lot of challenges, but there is kind of a goal to try to work these out as we move forward. And I think in the governor's recommended budget, it talks a lot about integrating these various initiatives. I do think we've found that we've been more successful. We've worked together. We've always worked pretty well together in Lane County, and I think we have opportunities to grow as required. But that's kind of, I think, the state of kind of where we're at in numbers on assistance. And just to give you an idea, before the recession, during that 5 years, we went up about in SNAP, about 80% increase in our SNAP caseload. So far, we're only down like 4 or 5%. And so, even though we're out of the recession, the recovery is awfully slow. And the other challenge is the types of jobs and wages are lower, right now, or not enough of them for people to get out of poverty. So that's another challenge. But I do think the alignment of goals and what we're trying to achieve at state level initiatives across the county is a great opportunity.
A couple of questions. One, recent incident in Opportunity Village where we had a couple who's had 4 children that have been taken away, drug and alcohol issues, been clean and sober for 8 months, working really hard. Of course, they needed to have a suitable place so they get their kids back. And one thing she told me was that she had 4 kids and each one had their own caseworker. And it meant she had to attend 4 separate meetings. And all of her time was spent, and she had a full-time job on top of it, and working really hard to get the family back. And so I was just kind of surprised by that. Do you know if that was normal or?
It's not very normal. We have to staff specially anytime we split siblings. So, because our goal is to keep siblings together.
So normally you would have the same staff person?
Yeah, and they may have a certified too, so they always have case managers, and then that's certified case manager. And they work with the foster home. So you're always going to have 2. But if the kids, for some reason we can't find placement for a foster home, to keep all these kids there, and if the kids have special needs, this is like they're medical foster homes, and so sometimes they do this. Yeah, it's unusual.
And unfortunately, they were able to get into housing after a couple of months in the village, so I think they got their kids.
And if their work schedule and stuff was preventing people raise our teachers really small, we'll work to try to make that work.
And the other question I had, behavioral health is under you, is that right? Or is that separate? That's right, okay, never mind.
Any other questions from the
Just my thought always is that we've been in a long, and almost all the basic services been in this long dive. And so the news has been pretty negative across the board for a long time. And people get worn out by the constant flow of negative things and the constant flow of need, and they sort of use up their sympathy resources, so to speak. And I just think as we move forward, every step we take, we should do our best to show people that the dial's turning, and just constantly find media ways to reach people, to tell them that this is what we're working on, this is what we think is happening, so they can have some belief that if you really do work on something, you can make some positive change happen. Because my firm belief is that people will do more when they feel like what they're doing will make a difference. So I just want to put that into all the committees and all the work that we do here. It's going to be very important to try. But I just think it's so important for people to feel like that things can be done, and it's not just a ask for money, it's really an ask for change.
Demonstrated.
I came from an economic development council meeting at Eugene this morning, the chamber, and that was part of the discussion. How do we start telling stories of positives, not to minimize the issues in our community, but how can we change the narrative so that those who have compassion fatigue can join in and understand that things are getting better. They may not be getting exponentially better, but how do we tell that story so that we change some of the perception? Because some of the problem is really the perception. And so I totally agree that it's sort of been a congruent theme today for me in discussions.
Yeah, and I think the stories are, I agree with you, it's never tell positive stories. So you're right, if we just say here is what was us, we can go on, but there are a lot of good things going on. And I think even in the spring, financial times, agencies have done really good work with families, and so a lot of families do move forward. And it's not enough, but it's still there's stories that you tell them to build on. And I think that's different. It's a gift, it's the stories that work. And so we have more work to do, but this is what we can do to piece these resources together.
In particular, in the area that we're dealing with in this room, people are not convinced you can do anything about it. And so that's the thing that I'm really interested in us being able to demonstrate.
Well, I'll just tag along with that, reinforcing the positive things that have happened and are happening, and reminding people, Noreen and Kitty, and Pat, you especially, that people need to know that even if they've done a little bit, they've made a difference. And I'll go back to Food for Lane County days. We always talk about how, and they still talk about how $1 can do so much. So letting people know that even a buck, even just a little shove, is getting their help is recognized. That we recognize that and it's making a difference. And that's you're good at that, Matt. You have the words, you have the media, you have.
Well, there's a question of beating the drum consistently. I think everybody is in the community groups that I'm involved in. Everybody's looking for the big story, and then once the big story's been told, then we're done. It's completed. We're finished. And you're right, Pat. It's the little things that matter as well, and be able to find places to tell those, because not only through the media, but through emails to elected officials, to donors, and other people, that those differences, that the contribution that they're making is making a difference is really important, and can't be underestimated in terms of its impact. So how we begin to address that, I think, is part of our strategic plan.
And I'll direct it right back to the people sitting around this table right now. What you all have done has already had a strong impact. Dan reported some of the things that have happened, some big things that have never happened before, just because this committee has begun to meet. And it's pretty impressive what can be done, focusing directly on the right person and giving reinforcement that what you did was the right thing.
So you're officially here now.
It's great. So I'm Christina Payne, I'm the Executive Director with Lane Workforce Partnership. Lane Workforce Partnership is a local workforce board serving Lane County. There are currently 7 boards in the state of Oregon. There will soon be 10 boards. There's been some areas that were quite large that will now have their own workforce boards. Boards are formed in federal law, currently through the Workforce Investment Act, soon to be the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act that was just signed in July by President Obama. And there's 2 sides to the workforce boards. There's the board side, and then there's the service delivery side. And a lot of what we do through service delivery is, again, through federal mandate, and I'll come back to that. I can talk about on the board side, our focus is in convening the businesses, the community leaders, and identifying where the opportunities are, really, for individuals in our community, for family wage jobs. So it's about where these opportunities are and how we position ourselves and educate our community in order for them to gain the skills that are needed so that they can qualify and be able to compete for these jobs in our community. It's also about making sure that these jobs stay here in our community so that as businesses, employers are here, that they are hearing that there are people with the needed skill sets that they've been asking for. We, in partnership with partners like the Department of Human Services, we've done some things over the years that have made a huge difference. You talk about little things that you can do that can make a huge difference in someone's life. When we had a project come our way and identified some individuals who were on TANF and had some background in healthcare, and yet there was this huge need in the healthcare industry at that time for more workers. And we brought a program from Lane Community College, expanded that program, and really shepherded those people through. We were able to get additional funds through the state of Oregon, through, at that point in time, it was vocational rehabilitation funds that we were able to access locally. But it took really hand in hand with these individuals to make sure that they could get from where they were to where they needed to be. And they went from working 2 jobs and barely supporting their families to becoming nurses and making, at that time, $38 an hour, and they probably are making more now. So it's projects like that. That's just one example. And I said I'd come back to the program delivery side because on a day-to-day basis with what's funded federally, on the program service side, it's pretty vanilla. It's kind of a one-size-fits-all. And so it's when we can, as a community, have that kind of collective impact where we've identified something and we've raised a voice and we've brought additional funds in to help a certain barrier population. But it's not on a day-to-day basis that we get to do these kinds of programs. It's really about we're working off a foundation that's funded, and if we're doing that really well and we tell our story really well, we can bring in additional funds to do some other types of projects. So WorkSource Oregon is our primary service delivery center. As you walk in as a customer, section of veterans. We do provide priority of service to veterans. It's not just if we happen to find out there are signage is all over that facility so that people know that they have priority of service, veterans and veterans families. And if they're not treated with priority of service and in a manner that one would expect, I want to hear about it because we want to make sure that they are served in a way that meets their sensitivity needs as they're coming in and looking for employment as they come back. That is federally funded and it's part of the vanilla services that we have. But as far as special services for different populations, it is one of those things that we have to receive special dollars for. We did, as a state, receive funds. The local workforce boards went in together and applied for a program that's called Rethinking Your Job Search. And we were awarded those funds. That program will be kicking off in July of 2015. And basically it deals with depression over long-term loss of employment. And it really is a program that will focus on that kind of self-talk that happens the longer that you are without a job and that the self-worth issues that come along with that. Grant funded. This is a program that we will have 2 years, and hopefully we can, as a board and as a community, if this is something that we see that is working really well in bringing people out of poverty and getting them back into employment, that it would be something that we could find additional funds for. So that's the thing about our work. We have a foundational structure in place, and then when we learn about the gaps in the programs and the things that we need and we find the funds that can help with that, we grab onto those funds, but typically it's short term.
Questions?
Having talked with Christina and John and I and Maureen are all on Christina's board, there is an opportunity, I think, to align resources in this next year in ways that we haven't. And one of the things that I brainstormed a little bit with Christina is just can we create sort of opportunity communities, and I think our public housing portfolio would be a really ripe opportunity where people don't pay any more than 30% of their income in rent, so we subsidize rent heavily. If John could bring some self-sufficiency resources and Christina could bring workforce resources to really give people the support they need to move out of public housing quickly, what that does for us is it allows us then to pull people out of homelessness onto public housing so then they can stabilize and sort of move on. So a big goal for me both at HACSA over the next year and I think for this board is how do we start to get some of these resources to rotate or graduate people out so we can pull people off the streets and into those stable environments more quickly. So our strategic work plan at HACSA for 2015 will have a goal of creating an opportunity community so we can begin to pilot that sort of approach.
I just think that that's such an important thing because my observation is we have fantastic affordable housing projects in this community and people don't move out. And so that's not the way it's supposed to work. It's supposed to have an opportunity to move into equally good housing which is not an affordable housing project, that you move forward. And right now we're sort of caught at every level and people losing big time when they try to make that transition. And so you're not only making it impossible for them to move, which is a really big disincentive to move because you'll end up poorer than you were when you were there. So that's just the absolute opposite direction of the way that we should be going and trying to fix that reset funnel. So that would be really helpful to the whole system.
Well, and I guess my thinking was kind of similar there, and I work with a lot of families who are at that point where they need intervention to keep them from losing their Section 8 or their public housing, to keep them from becoming homeless. And so having something, some way to intervene with those types of families to keep them from going backwards and keep them moving forward.
I very much get the positive aspect of what needs to be done. If nothing else, they're going meetings instead of sitting on drag down. But it's my understanding that the Section 8 was disclosed, and that was the meeting the other day where I was told that the waiting list for single people has gotten over 6 years, and now it's going to close in January. So, for those who don't know it, that's a state of desperation. It's like we have public housing, but all of this are closed. And if you're even able to sign up, you're so poor that someone who lives in public housing and lives at commission, you have to find a way to survive for 6 years until you get on the top of that list. That's asking an awful lot of very almost a torture for desperate people. So they should, most know. In some areas, it's sort of a desperate. I'm living the mission. Where am I going to go? What am I going to do? You can send someone to down Bay Island Road to sign up. In January, we won't be able to do that. So yeah, it's moving people through the system is great. But I was really listening to some of the legislative stuff and just hoping to find some way of saying we can change that. 6 years is just intolerable.
To toot my own horn, but I mean, really, this is what this is about. And I just had a conversation with Hoyle about getting 5%. I emailed Jacob to get 5% of that $100 million budget and earmark it for micro housing projects, because we can take folk off that 6-year waiting list and get them into a house that costs us $15,000 to build, not counting land. And for less than what they're paying now in Section 8, we can give them something they can purchase. And if we can get that 5% out of that and do more demonstration projects to show how this works, I think we have another model to help with that waiting list issue.
Well, that's one of the exciting things that's erupted in the last couple of years.
And Stephanie, I'm going to wait until after you're done with your 5-year plan before we inundate the city with I can just see her going, ah!
No, I mean, I just wanted to underscore Mayor Pierce's comments about our public and affordable housing residents. And so through the Lane Livability Consortium, we were able to do an expanded set of focus groups and surveys in partnership with St. Vincent de Paul, Cornerstone, and HACSA to really better understand how can we help people move through this system. And coming out of that, St. Vincent de Paul took a huge look at the resident services, formed a partnership with Lane Workforce around the workforce certification program that is currently going to be implemented. And so there are real things that are happening now. We're not waiting for a 5-year plan to be created to do those things. And so I think there are a huge number. Yeah, so there's an enormous amount of work that is underway, as Jacob is describing. But I think it is important to recognize that you create a project, it gets filled, and then what are the barriers in terms of people moving through that? And the employment, we've spent a huge amount of time talking about childcare as a huge barrier for the people. And it's that sense of stability that people, it's a huge risk to move from a situation where you have a controlled housing cost and a controlled set of incomes to move out into the private market and to have the assurance that your job is going to continue and that you're going to be able to sustain yourself over time. So I think that is a bit of what we're challenged with in our community right now, because people don't have that sense of confidence or upward mobility.
I think you raised a good, when you underscore something that the mayor said earlier, and so did Pat, is that you had this great work that came out of this focus group on research. And you guys were able to use that. But it would be good for the rest of the community to know what the outcome of that research has been and what's happening. So if there's a way to get that out, either through your own PIO or call me and I'll help you out, you've got to get that information out into the community as well. So
I'd be happy to share it.
There's a wonderful link livability website.
Yeah.
That goes through each of the focus areas and it's rich.
So livabilitylane.org has all of these reports on it, and I know CJ just reviewed the survey report recently, and we have done presentations to numerous parties and our goal is willing to do more to help the board out on some of these issues, because I think at times we just kind of, even with the providers, we learn so much through doing this look about how to make adjustments to what we are doing to get to the real outcomes that we want to see.
Right.
And so I think sharing those steps with those hospitals is great.
You've hit your hand up for a bit.
Yeah, actually going on to what you were saying about the risk, we do have a new performance measure looking at where households are 6 months after exiting these housing programs. And it's not good. 60% are off the grid, they're not getting energy assistance, which is a good indicator. If they were getting energy assistance, we would know they're in housing arrest. They're not, many of them have cycled back again through, so they end up back in an emergency shelter or in a place not meant for habitation. So we're only having about 40% that are able to maintain after 6 months. That is a really short period of time. So maybe something to consider, or what you guys were talking about is having actually kind of a plan, is how do you support a household who has left that subsidized project? What do you need to have in place so they can stay in their own unit in the community and not cycle through again and again? Every time they do it, they have an eviction notice. They have less likelihood of getting another unit ever again. It just becomes very dire.
So this is not like we need more to do, but my thought about this is the community is so concerned with the impacts of having so many people unhoused and in need in our community. I think it's worth considering whether we meet with the registered guard and ask for their help in giving out ongoing information about where we're starting and where we're going and how we move through, and do it in a way because they, first of all, we'll do it for them more, and secondly, so that's good because they don't have any reporters anyway. But I do think that could be a partnership they might be willing to be part of, because it is something of real concern to the community, and there's a lot of information here that we need to get out to people, and it's part of what we were talking about before. You tell a story, tell people how we're moving, and build. And so that's just a thought for this body to consider. I think that's part of dealing with the issue, is building understanding and replacing misinformation with good factual information and real stories.
we have a TV Suites parade that'll be coming up in February, so we'll be doing it until soon. But the series of things, but yeah.
Just real briefly, I'll harken back to this, when people are in housing, making certain that they develop the skills to be out of subsidized housing. And I always talk about Field of Dreams and the success rate that Field of Dreams had, and I presume still has, in teaching people how to enter into home ownership. But teaching people how to live in unsubsidized housing, I don't know how strong our programs are there, but I would think that there are a lot of people who, given a little bit of instruction on how to manage their resources once they're out, they can stay, you said off the grid, stay on the grid, I guess, is that the right expression of the right mindset? But, teaching people how to do that, and it seems to me that sometimes it's just a tiny little thing that people have to know how to do that makes it so that they can make everything else fit together.
And I think when you're really vulnerable, one little thing that maybe I can manage, you have a household that is so vulnerable, that was the deal breaker right there. Yeah, they had a medical bill, they had any of those things, they lost some hours of work, suddenly they can't pay their house.
And there may have been resources available to help them if they'd known how to access the resources. Personally, I think to it.
Anything else? Couple things. What would you guys like to see on the agenda for next month? Issues?
We were discussing decriminalization.
Okay.
Yeah, so it'd be helpful to know what you would like to hear, what information do we need to gather for that meeting?
Well, for me, three things. One is general information about human rights and homelessness and decriminalization, something like Ken you guys talked about. Another is what is the city's position on citing homeless people, and part of this discussion is around the table. What do people feel is right? We were told last time, as I remember, that the only police agency in Lane County that really cites homeless people is the city of Eugene, not Serbu. And if that's the case, some of us feel it's very wrong. But and a lot of us feel there is a solid basis, a legal basis for not citing and arresting people who are homeless, simply for the crime of being homeless. So, maybe a presentation, and I also love to hear from the city. I don't know if the city ever want to talk about it, or invite at some point invite in people talk about how the city deals with it and what its perspective is, and I would love for us to have some kind of resolution at the end of it saying we support. We have been moving forward to not criminalizing people in a homeless state.
My only comment about that would be is it's the city issue. So it's because the public put that law in place. So it would be the public that would have to be removing that law from the books as in the, and through it is through their elected officials, but it is, and your elected officials of course are just you too, so it's, I'm just saying that it isn't Pete Kearns, he didn't make it up, and it isn't it isn't our officers who made it up, it's what's on our books, and so I think, you start with that as sort of the groundwork that is the current law.
So do we need some information on how certain laws came into being, why?
It would probably be interesting to find, and they've been there a long time.
Yeah, okay.
So the video that was sent out on the decriminalization. Right. I think there's some lessons we can learn from that. What I think, if we could educate the public who might understand more the cost associated with criminalizing homelessness, and that's where they, I mean, what they made the difference in those videos is how much it was costing to do that versus how much less it costs to provide housing for people. And so maybe there's some public education.
So we're already on the other end that we're already currently working on a housing first model, because we understand, at least some of us understand that, but that hasn't stopped the other part. So it's like putting what we know now together with a long-term way that we've been dealing with this issue and seeing where we are now and where we think we should be going as a community with that information.
Just because we're going to get close to running out of time, we did actually invite Ken, Ken, if he would speak at the January meeting about criminalization. And I know that Stephanie also has a timeline issue around presenting about the comp plan. So, and you needed to do that in January as well, right? So,
I was very hopeful.
yeah, so those two, so I'm wondering, I mean, like, today I thought worked out pretty well. This meeting didn't feel as rushed as it normally is, which was really nice. So maybe we could really set aside a good amount of time for those two presentations.
Did you tell us how much time?
Half an hour for Stephanie. Yeah, and Ken, half an hour. I think we could do it.
All right. How long is the video call that you sent out?
There were 3 of them, and they were just a few minutes each.
I mean, would it be reasonable to ask that if we send that link out again, that everyone, just encourage everyone to watch it before the meeting? Yeah, it would be worth it, so we don't have to use time in the meeting.
Steve? Yeah, the other thing I want to interject here, and I don't know if it's right at the beginning point of next month, but I do know that some of our staff and I have been contacted by the city prosecutor's office, and what I would say is that folks are trying to put together some sort of diversion or amnesty program that would allow someone not to be charged, under certain circumstances. And so I think we should hear about those ideas, and that's sort of what can be done intermediary, and so that somebody may still get cited for nuisance, because somebody calls in and says there's somebody there who just did this or that, but if they're enrolled in this program, then and they follow through with some of the things that are being asked of them. Anyhow, that's the kind of thinking that's going on as well.
What we might have to do is do a couple of sessions around the criminalization, because there are a lot of questions he brought up and others in order to get that included so that we're not rushing through it. Maybe we could do a couple.
So we have the beginnings of that discussion at the January meeting.
Right.
And
then Stephanie, and then
your plan.
And then continue it.
Right from there. Does that make sense to everybody?
I just want to really quickly throw in, there is a sense of desperation when you're really home, of course. Same things a lot of stuff. You need a sense of warmth. You need a sense of people in the community care about you and the way the bar. These kinds of things, when these discussions happen, very poor people hear about it and they say somebody actually cares, somebody's listening, and human rights is a great issue to kind of bring that to the forefront.
Well, I don't know how we're going to go through this, but to me, you've got to really educate the public. Because if I get a lot of mail about the criminalization, I get a lot of mail about why aren't you dealing with these people that are down here on my corner or down here and here. So I think there is a real need for the public to understand what you're not accomplishing. I probably shouldn't prejudice them. I just say, there needs to be a greater understanding of the situation and a greater understanding of what decriminalization does and doesn't do. And then I suppose the answer would be that there's something better to do to deal with this that can get you results that you'd all be happier with. So that's kind of the pathway, if we can find a way to have that conversation, not just around this table, but with our broader community, because there's certainly like this.
Sure. Okay, yes. I just wanted to add to what you're saying, that I think one of the places that we're needing to communicate better is that perception, especially from the homeless advocacy community, is that police cite people indiscriminately for being homeless, basically. And the perception in general that I get from the policing is that the public doesn't know that we're very discreet about this and that we're only citing people who have earned the citation in some manner. And the fine details are not getting pinned down in the communication. So I think that's part of the communication that needs to happen around this is if indeed you feel like this, if the police feel like these are reasonable tickets, they're not communicating to the general public why this is more than just a blanket where you're homeless and getting a ticket.
Would you be able to speak to that, or is there someone you could invite to be able to speak to that?
Well, I think Chief Kearns would be ideal. So, to wrap up, we had two big issues to tackle in January. We have Stephanie's 5-year plan in the beginning of this, because we have a robust conversation about homelessness and criminalization.
You didn't know you wanted to.
Yeah, no, it is the Eugene. It is a collaborative effort. And Human Services Commission and HISA and all of them.
I was hoping you were going to take this. I hope you were going to take this as a compliment of being well organized and strategic and a leader and all that. I apologize for keeping all that on. Because I know the hobby anyway. So I'm responsible. Yeah. Anyway, so with that, is anything else for the good of the order for today?
Can I ask a question? Whose pen was being passed around? Yeah. Whose is it?
Is it a pen?
Nice pen, right?
The reason I asked is because I made this. I gave it away a long, long time ago.
Wait, it is one of your pins.
It is one of
Nobody's playing again.
Wow.
All right.
I didn't bring one today.
It's fine, then it's fine, Pat.
The pen owner's not going to come forward.